But John's sitting right there. Before, it wasn't in my message. It just occurred to me on the spot when I looked at him, and I said, "You've done a great job with the land. You can visit your backyard. You can see your neighbor's backyard. You can fly the Grand Canyon or go down to the Caymans or go to wherever you want to on the planet. But what about the ocean? You should call this thing Google Dirt because you've left out the blue. You can go to the surface, but that's not the ocean. That's just the top of the ocean." Well, he could have been offended and never looked at me again, but he wasn't. In fact, he said it was like getting stabbed in the heart. And he invited me to come down to the Googleplex and talk with the Googlers and suggest what was needed to tell the world about the ocean. So they said, "Okay, what do we need to do?" And I said, "My brain isn't big enough to tell you all the things you need to do. You have to talk to the Navy to get bathymetry. You need a map." But then we got about 30 characters from around the world who are experts in this thing and that thing. And over 3 years, we actually, that's my cell phone, haha. Turn off your cell phones. Sorry, throw it away somewhere. And it took 3 years because there were some little glitches that needed to be solved, like negative elevation on Google Earth. They could go all the way to the stars, but they couldn't go 10 feet underwater until they fixed the system. And so it is fixed. And a year ago, it launched. And if you haven't flown around Google Earth and turned on the layer that is called Explore the Ocean, I mean, do it. I mean, it's better to go there personally. Well, at about the same time the same week it was, like within a couple days of it, this Google Ocean thing splashed across the world. I had a chance to articulate a wish about what could be done, a big wish, one that could change the world. And this was at the TED conference. TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, Design. If you haven't looked at TED Talks, Google that and be amazed. For 25 years, they've been inviting people to come first to Monterey and then down to Long Beach. They have shifted quarters because more and more people are engaged in this movement, basically, to think about how do you change the world. And they chose 3 of us last year to make a wish that they are helping to implement. And my wish was pretty simple, but it's also big. It's a big wish that is to ignite public support for basically taking care of the ocean, to develop new technologies, Phil, and all the rest of you clever-minded people out there, to have expeditions to explore the ocean, to do what it takes to establish what I call, what some people call marine protected areas, sanctuaries, reserves. I call them hope spots, places large enough to protect the blue heart of the planet. That means places that are in really good shape, like parts of Indonesia, the places you most love to dive these days, or the Cayman Islands, or parts of the Arctic and the Antarctic, where the bite of humankind is less than in other places. But it's also places that we can make a difference if we just back off some of the things that we're doing, like Chesapeake Bay is a hope spot for me. It's not hopeless. Some people think so. The crabs probably think so. But we have 1% of the oysters in Chesapeake Bay that were there when my parents were kids. So we need to stop eating our life support system. Back off ocean wildlife. Give them a break. A grouper is worth more alive than dead, not just because they're fun to go play with, but because they're part of what keeps the ocean healthy. I had a chance on another occasion to meet with President Bush. Oh,
that worked out.
It was amazing. Yeah. The film that Jean-Michel Cousteau had produced called The Voyage to Cure was shown at the White House, thanks largely to Laura Bush. She had gone out there, was really disgusted by all the trash that's accumulated even in those wild, remote islands of the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. And so she had this airing at the White House, and both President and Mrs. Bush came. There were 50 people, dinner, after we looked at the film, popcorn and all that, open seating, room a little bit bigger than this, tables of 6. My friend sat at an empty table, and a guy came in next to her and asked if it was okay to sit next to her. It was the President of the United States. And she almost dropped her forkful or whatever, but she said, oh, yes, of course. And then I came in, and by then the table had filled except for one place, and I managed to squeeze into that place. And for an hour and a half, we talked about what it would take to really protect the ocean. And the Northwest Hawaiian Islands was on the table then as a protected area, perhaps a marine sanctuary. And there were 3 sizes, small, medium, and large. Would it be a management zone where fishing would be allowed, or would it be fully protected? What would it be? And in the hour and a half, we really took the opportunity. Lori Arguelles, who's head of the Marine Sanctuary Foundation, was able to get across the fact that a sanctuary isn't really a sanctuary. It's a management area. It's more like a national forest. You can kill the fish there. What a concept. You call it a sanctuary. And President Bush said, well, why do you call it a sanctuary then? Stellwagen Bank is a marine sanctuary. You'd think the fish and the scallops and everybody out there would be safe, like a national park. It's safer than the surrounding water, but it's not truly protected. It's a tool in the box, an important one, sort of a halfway place where fish and people kind of get acquainted in a different way, but it's not fully protected. And I found myself saying, knowing that President Bush was a fisherman, look, if you want to have fishermen, you gotta have fish. Duh. One of those big duh moments. If you want to have fish, you can't just take them anywhere, anytime, in any numbers. Ducks Unlimited learned that years ago about wild birds. If you want to have a few ducks to take home once in a while, or quail or pigeons or whatever, you've got to be able to have breeding areas and feeding areas and look out for the corridors over which they pass, getting from one place to another. And we need to do the same thing for fish. And it went on like that for an hour and a half of nonstop conversation. And as he left that meeting, he called back to Jim Connaughton, who's the head of CEQ, Council of Environmental Quality at the time. And he said, Jim, make it happen. I want the biggest area, and I want it to be no take, no fishing. You got it, Jim? Everybody was stunned. That's not the outcome that we expected. We were hoping that at least some place would be protected.
This is President Bush, by the way. And this is President Bush. Can you imagine what we can do with Obama if we get Sylvia in front of him?
Get all of you. No, we need everybody. We need everybody. Your voices count. When I was chief scientist at NOAA, we listened to letters that came in. They all had to get answered. The letters from kids got put up on the bulletin board. The drawings that they made got passed around. Kid power is beyond what you could imagine. Don't for a moment underestimate what you can do as a kid. And the kid that's in everybody, don't underestimate what lives inside of however old you are, Phil, or anybody in this room. Phil, in particular, has tremendous power because he builds tools that scientists use. How are we going to get down to 1,000 feet? You can get there one way, but easy. But I love going one way and then coming back. And and the equipment that Phil and some of the other crafty characters in this room and in this conference and in the world are making, but there aren't enough of them, and there aren't enough of us using that equipment. So use your minds, use your voice and your heart. We need networks of protected areas around the world. How much of your heart do you want to protect? Right now, a fraction of 1% of the ocean is protected. That's not enough.